Welcome to the POLKCAST. My name is Courtney.
And I'm Lisa.
And today, for our second episode, we have Thomas Miller, who we're going to spend some time chatting with. So just to get us started, Thomas, would you mind kind of telling us a little bit about yourself and your role here at Polk?
Sure, no problem. My name is Thomas Miller. I'm one of the general superintendents at Polk. I work out of the Houston office, and I've been with the company about 5 years. I started in the industry because of my father, who's a master plumber, and he owned his own company. And I would work for him in the summers when I was younger. But I told my dad I would never be a plumber.
Why? Why is that, Thomas?
Well, most people think of a plumber running around with a plunger in their hand, and, they're thinking of Super Mario Brothers, and that's really their first impression. But I don't do anything like that. I don't want to be doing anything like that. So for the last 10 years, I've been doing new construction. And I specialize in medical gas piping, which is the oxygen and nitrogen systems that are in most hospitals, and they save lives. And because of that, they have to be clean. So I like being kind of clean in that regard. So I'm totally not the suspender-wearing plunger boy looking for gold coins and stars.
That's awesome. And so I guess kind of your path into the industry, what else can you tell us about it now that you've spent some time in the industry?
Yeah, so I've been blessed to be part of the industry. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but this has really afforded me the opportunity to live a life that I wanted in terms of financial stability. I've never had problems maintaining a job. It pays pretty well, and it's challenged me to grow and solve problems. And at Polk, I get to work with people that have the same kind of mindset. We work hard, but we play harder. And so I've made a lot of friendships that have lasted and will continue to last over the years.
That's awesome. On a personal front, do you have any hobbies or interests?
I don't have time for that. No, I'm just joking. So I've been playing rock and blues music on my guitar for a long time. I wish I had a little bit more time to do that, but that's kind of hard with my role and having kids. I just bought a Chevy Silverado ZR2. It's awesome. I love it. It's great. My wife and Elizabeth and I have been married nearly 12 years, and we have 2 boys. I have an 11-year-old, and my youngest is 6.
Are you going to shoot for a girl?
No. We come from a long line of boys, so I had 2 boys. My dad had 2 boys. His dad had 2 boys, so... we're kind of stuck. No girls.
Keeping with the tradition.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for kind of sharing a little bit about yourself. Definitely some fun and interesting hobbies, and your path to Polk is really exciting to hear about. In the last podcast, we spoke to John Lewis about investing with Polk, investing in yourself and investing in your career. For this episode, we really want to discuss the topic of strategic planning and just how that really affects and influences what you do. So with all that being said, would you mind sharing just an overview of the role that it plays in your day-to-day as a general superintendent?
Sure. Strategic planning is really kind of looking to the future and anticipating future needs like growth, training, resources, stuff like that. But in my role, I'm always looking for ways that I can support our company. So I have to think about how our goals kind of affect our overall business direction.
How do you define those goals?
Good question. Well, a lot of people may not know kind of what goes on behind the scenes or in the closed-door meetings that me and the other general superintendents sit in. Really, the senior leaders in our company set goals like revenue or safety numbers or even initiatives like our prefab investment. And probably, if you're in the DFW area, you've seen how we've kind of transformed the shop. So we then take those plans and kind of implement those into yearly or even long-term goals. We really anticipate the resources like people, when we need to hire new personnel, for example, how we're going to train and provide growth opportunities to these people, just like we really partner with our vendors or trade experts to provide trainings.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. So how does strategic planning really contribute to achieving these goals that the company and you as an individual have?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a pathway. It kind of sets out kind of what we're going to do. So we take those 3 to 5 year goals and break them down into yearly segments. so that it's something kind of tangible, something that we can work with. We next set 90-day rocks to reach each of those yearly goals. And I'm kind of OCD. A lot of people don't know. So putting those ideas to paper, kind of getting those ideas out of my head kind of helps me to stay on track. As a team, we check in periodically and we see what the status is of the assigned tasks and maybe how we can help each other. So that kind of helps. It kind of sets the pace.
So you mentioned, Thomas, 90-day rocks, but I'm not sure that everybody knows what a rock is. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so absolutely. A lot of people have heard of the rocks and sand analogy, where you have a group of rocks and an amount of sand, and you're trying to stuff all of it into a container. Now, if you put the sand into the glass first and then you try to add the rocks, it really doesn't work, doesn't fit. And it's the same principle. These are the core group of tasks or assignments, those goals that you must complete in the next 90 days. And the sand is kind of like all those other little things that kind of fill up your schedule. So we note the major tasks that we have to complete, and then we're always trying to bring those to the forefront. That way, those everyday little mundane things don't end up blocking out the major tasks. So for me, it's a good mental reminder to kind of stay on task or focus, because in our hectic day, I get so many emails and phone calls that if I don't block out that time frame or block out those tasks, then they kind of go to the wayside.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you share an example of a strategic plan that you implemented and the impact of the success of that project?
Sure, yes. So the same principle kind of works when running a project. We have deadlines. We kind of know when the owner wants to move into their building. So you work backwards, assigning the major milestones of that schedule, like when fixtures or finishes need to be done so that you can schedule your final inspections, or when the air-on date is, or when the studs are going up and the roof gets dried in. So all those things kind of help to identify the major tasks. We kind of work backwards in the schedule. So we break those down into rocks of the project. So in our industry, we do a lot of pool plan meetings. That's kind of when we get all the various contractors together. We work out the sequence of work to build the building. And this has been successful in a couple of our projects. We've recently finished 2, the Clear Sky Hospital in Baytown and the HEB Katy Park job. We use pool plans and internal goals to kind of set the time frame for our work. And this really enhanced our communication. We know what our deliverables are. We know when we got to do these things. And so this adds to a well-executed project. And as a result, both of those projects are actually turning in early. So the general contractor is really happy with us. HEB is getting open two weeks early, which helps them as far as revenue goals and those kind of things. And it really adds to kind of our working relationship with our clients.
Now we just need more HEBs here in the DFW area.
And so with that, with kind of all that comes with construction, how fast-paced it is, how it's ever-changing, how do you make sure that the strategic plan that you have in place is still flexible enough and adaptable to any changes or challenges that might be coming from an owner or a GC or even, other subcontractors on the project?
Yeah, construction as a whole can sometimes be challenging, but we have to remain not too rigid, right? There's weather and other trades, and those things kind of affect us the most. So we really have to kind of work toward those things that are affecting us. But really, we have good people who care about what they're building, and they work hard to use their experience to kind of overcome these challenges. And so we always try to say, keep it simple. Don't be too rigid, and just, kind of go with the tide of the punches.
Mm-hmm. And then in this planning process, how do you involve your key stakeholders, the people who hold the most weight when it comes to accomplishing your set out goal that you're doing through planning?
Yeah, it's important for everyone to participate and to hold each other accountable. So what I mean is that if another trade doesn't participate in the process, really the construction team might not understand how their work affects our own work. And it's critical for everyone to be prepared and to speak up. For example, I was on a project that we had a hard deadline, and we were changing out a medical gas air compressor. Now, the medical air compressor supplies breathing air to the patients of the hospital. Now, you cannot install a new compressor and then just turn it on and walk away. It has to run for a time period before it can be put into service. This is really a life safety rule. So you don't put people at risk prematurely. You kind of work out the kinks of the machine and the equipment. The general contractor at the time didn't really want to hear that the project time frame was going to be delayed. But the hospital was very appreciative that we spoke up and that we gave them the facts early so that they could plan and be prepared for the outage. See, it's important for us to have those kind of frank conversations. Otherwise, we get bad information and then the true schedule can't be made.
What about on the flip side of it? So you've got the stakeholders involved. What about the employees and getting their buy-in, and once the project is executed, making sure that they're aligned?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, just like everyone else, they don't want to be left out of the conversation. And it helps when they fully buy into the process, right? They're our frontline workers. They're the ones that are really putting it in, and that's how we make a living. And so we set goals like weekly work plans. That helps us to kind of anticipate and know what our weekly goal is. That also helps them to know what they're going to be doing the next day and the rest of the week, so they know what tools to bring. I mean, can you imagine if you had to lug around 50 or 100 pounds of tools every day just to realize that only a few of those hand tools were actually needed? So they kind of want to be not left out of the loop. They want to be included in the planning process and kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had someone who was moving up into a leadership position at the company and maybe was never involved in their strategic planning process and they didn't really know how to get started or what that necessarily means, what would you tell them to start the process? How do you begin strategic planning?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I mean, the whole process and stuff can kind of be overwhelming. I would say it's always better to break things down into bite-sized chunks. So we'll start off small. That's why we always talk about those milestones, like the major critical components. When you're going to turn over a building, when the building's going to be dried in, when the slab's going to get poured. You know, you have probably 4 or 5 major milestones in a building. And so if you take those instead of trying to, think about you're going to have a 20-story building and I'm going to be working in 15 areas, you kind of complex the idea. So just starting off small, figure out what your end date is and what your end goal is going to be, and then just work backwards. That's always been the easiest for me. I think several years ago, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, we really started to buy into this lead and lean process, which is working backwards, understanding what the end is and what do you have to make this end happen. And so you're always biting things down or breaking down things into bite-sized chunks. And then that way it's not overly complicated or hard or nothing like that. And then with like new managers and supervisors, I always tell them the easiest thing to do is make you a weekly plan. Just make a week plan, and then you can break those down into 4 steps or 5 steps. Every day I got to do this to be at my 100% mark. So try not to make it hard. Try not to make it complicated. That's the best advice I can give anybody.
Bite-sized chunks. That's great.
I like that. And then just to tag on to that too, there's a lot of players involved in this process. We kind of already talked about key stakeholders, but what's your advice for like communication and keeping track of everybody that you need to communicate all these, moving parts to?
Yeah, well, I've learned a lot from Pete. Pete Black is our VP of labor, and he's good at kind of putting things to paper, organizing things and making it make sense. And then if it's on paper or not in your head, you can always refer back to it. You can kind of set like little goals. We use Teams a lot. We had a lady in L&D at one time that kind of helped me with OneNote. And so kind of putting things to paper and organizing my thoughts has really helped, because I can always refer back to those if I get lost or I forget what's going on. and always look back to that. I used to carry a notebook around with me all the time and have all my notes jotted in there. Well, one time I lost it for 3 days and I about lost my mind. So if you've ever been in that scenario, you kind of know how bad that is. But using OneNote has saved my life, so to speak, because I can access it from my phone, from my computer. If I'm working on something at the house, I can kind of pull it up and add like little notes. So that helps.
That is a fantastic tool.
Okay, here's another fun question. Thomas, if the world was ending and a zombie apocalypse was underway, and you could only pick 3 people in order to like navigate this new world with, who would you pick?
Easy, hands down. My wife and my 2 kids. That's a brainer. And I think if I said anything else, then the zombie apocalypse would happen at my house later tonight.
That's a good response.
I mean, my kids are hilarious. They teach me something all the time. They're very creative, and they're just, I guess because of my wife, she's smart. They're forward thinking, and they're always like coming up with the problem solving. So if I got a problem or I'm talking to my wife about something, they're like, "Well, Poppy, you should do this," or "Have you tried this?" I'm like, "You're 6. Why are you trying?" You know,
they're just future strategic planners.
It's the answer I've ever had to that question.
Agreed.
That was amazing.
We'll send her the link.
Yes. Get you some points.
Please. Brownie points.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Thomas, just appreciate so much you taking the time out of your day. I know you're busy, and we just really appreciate you chatting with us and sharing your insights with all of Polk when
Absolutely.
we share this.
Yeah, y'all made it fun and made it kind of low key and relaxed. So that's always good. I appreciate y'all, and keep up the hard work. I know y'all got a lot of big plans coming. So Lisa, thank you. Courtney, always appreciate y'all, and it's been fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Thomas. Now it's time for our Insights Recap, where we're going to break down the conversation and give you some key takeaways. Thomas told us about his process for strategic planning. We wanted to go ahead and provide a tool for you that we find useful. So whether this is something you've been doing for some time or if it's a new process for you, it's a way to kind of break things down into those bite-sized chunks that Thomas was speaking about. It's called a SWOT analysis. So what does that stand for? It stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's a way for people or businesses to really look at themselves or a project from all different angles. So here's kind of a deeper dive into what each of those parts means. So starting off with strengths, these are the things that you, your project, or your department are good at. So for example, maybe you have a really strong reputation. I'd say that Polk Nation has a really strong reputation as a whole, so that's a stronger example of, department-wide or company-wide. Communication skills, maybe you have really strong communication skills. And then even our talented workforce, thinking about all that they bring to the table in terms of their strengths. So to find your strengths, ask yourself, what advantages do you have and what are your strong points? The second piece in the SWOT analysis is looking at weaknesses. So these are the areas where you, your team, or even on a larger scale, like the department, might struggle or need improvement. So for example, you might find some weak points in your personal or business processes. So to find these weaknesses, ask yourself, what are the things you're not so good at and where could you use some help? So strengths and weaknesses, that's the first part of that SWOT analysis, looking at internal factors. For the next 2, you're going to be looking at external factors. Lisa, you want to speak on those?
Sure. So we have opportunities and threats. Opportunities are the external factors that you could use to your advantage. For example, our partnerships with our sister companies or vendors that we've used in the past, really just our ability to pool resources together to gain mutual benefit. And to find those, you might ask things like what good chances or possibilities are out there, or what trends or events could be helpful with this project. And then on the threat side, these are things that could be problematic or challenging. For example, a GC or owner changing deadlines, which then causes you to change your plan or schedule, or things being built out of sequence. So really with threats, you have to kind of anticipate what might happen. You might ask yourself what obstacles or dangers might you face, or what could go wrong. So in a nutshell, a SWOT analysis is kind of like taking a snapshot of yourself or your project, looking at what you're good at, where there might be some room for improvement, what opportunities are available, and what challenges you might encounter. It's really, like we said, just a useful tool for planning and making decisions based on a clear understanding of your current situation. And it's a good thing to get you started, I think. So you can find this if you want your own SWOT analysis template to use. You can check out the link in the description of the YouTube video, and it will take you to the Polk training portal where the SWOT analysis template can be found in the resource section.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, Courtney. Hope y'all all have a great day at Polk Nation.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.